Getting started with the first sort of like real session. We have a slight shift in the scheduling because we're still waiting for that bus from Ithaca to come. We're hoping they will come in, but the first speaker in the session would have been on that bus. So bear with us. As a result of this, we have like actually a little bit of a treat because like Stephanie is going to be our first speaker today. Stephanie Valencia from the University of Maryland, dear collaborator of mine, and I'm very excited about the talk that we're headed for. Big round of applause for Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Stephanie Valencia, and I am in the College of Information in College Park, Maryland. And I'm an assistant professor there, and I want to talk to you today about access agency action, participatory design in practice. So, I am a human computer interaction researcher, and I think a lot about design methods that can help us really get to like the core of like what is it that might be interesting here? How can we foster creativity in designing technology? But most importantly, how do we include everyone to have a say in what we build? And so the reason for this is because I believe that design is most powerful when the people it affects are actively involved. And this was mentioned in the introduction of the summit, which is great. I was like, yes, this is super important. Um, and yet, too often, traditional design methods in technology leave out those with diverse communication styles or disabilities entirely out of the design process. At the same time, innovation, like creating new technology that's really helpful for people, relies on methods that help us tap into creativity and this tacit knowledge or this knowledge that people have, but they have trouble articulating because it's just built in into our habits. Innovation really relies on design methods like workshops or like ideation sessions, like putting post-its on a board or discussion groups. And these are all great, but they require rapid conversation, sketching, fast iteration, which might not always be very accessible to all. So, how can we still innovate together and explore new ideas while including everyone? This is especially important to consider when we're thinking about diverse design teams. So imagine, and the picture I'm showing in the slides right now shows four individuals. They are around like a craft table. Like table is filled with like fabrics, some glue, some wooden things. And in this design team, we also have Mark, who's a collaborator and friend. And Mark is a wheelchair user. And on his wheelchair, we see an AAC device or an augmentative and alternative communication device that generates speech mounted on his wheelchair. And he uses head switches to operate this device. And so, in a diverse design team like this, where decisions are being made about a future technology, it's really important to consider how to design an environment where everybody's voices are really heard without any rushes and really without any barriers. And so I want you to introduce you, or perhaps you already know, this term participatory design, which is something that in academia we know as a method that is about bringing everybody, users and stakeholders with different disciplinary backgrounds, to the table to shape designs that affect their lives, right? But still, their participatory design idea to making it accessible, I think there's still a lot that we can do in innovating new methods so that everybody is really included. So I thought about maybe sharing like a checklist or perhaps like three tips that can help us kind of reflect if you're ever in that space of designing a workshop or a design project to include everyone's voices. The first part of this checklist is the word access. So, access means not just being in the room, but being able to engage meaningfully. So, think about okay, how are all participants really engaging with the topic you're deciding? The second word is agency. In the context of this talk, agency is about giving participants real influence, not just token input over choices. And the third word is action. So, really making sure contributions shape outcomes so people see their voices reflected in that final design. And so, I have a couple of projects to show you an example of perhaps how access, agency, and action look in practice. There is lots more to do, so would love to hear your thoughts on how we can continue this. So, in this first project, we were working in the space of AAC, or Augmentative and Alternative Communication, in collaboration with individuals who use speech generating devices, right? So, they type to speak. And we were noticing that there was this big gap on providing a channel for nonverbal communication with these devices. These devices are kind of similar to um, a famous example and that I will use is kind of like a famous AAC user, although we have a very famous one here with us. Stephen Hawking, for example, he used a computer-like device, right? And used some accessible inputs to type and then generate a voice to communicate with others. What happens is that communication really relies on nonverbal gestures as well. And so we wanted to explore, could perhaps maybe creating like a robot or some sort of expressive item support augmented communicators conversations in a way? And it's a very out there idea, but we really wanted to explore kind of like new things. And we took a lot of inspiration from great work done here at Cornell. So in Cornell, some research labs have found out that actually motion displayed through peripheral robots can really support conversation and engagement. And these robots are non-anthropomorphic, so they don't look like humans, but they, just with slight movements, really change a social environment for people speaking in a group. One example from Jung's lab, the MicBot was just like this microphone that would be on a table and would like change directions to remind others that perhaps you're speaking too much, let's give the turn to this other person. And then we also have Keep One, which I really like from Hoffman's lab, which it looked like a lamp sort of robot, but whenever a conversation got aggressive between two speakers, the lamp would like shake like if it was scared, and it reminded participants like, whoa, maybe we should like calm down. So these robots are like giving these extra cues that perhaps could augment communication. And our AAC user partners were also interested in like, what else can we do to communicate non-verbally? So in a design fashion, we really wanted to find a metaphor for exploring this. And so we looked at this concept of a sidekick, a social robot that supports a protagonist by existing as a secondary character and appearing only when needed. So a sidekick can be there to help you with perhaps nonverbal communication, but it's not the agent or the main role. And this is a really out there kind of idea, but I think it was fun and it's important to include everyone's perspectives when coming up with them. So before we got to working, we had lots of conversations with the community and especially our AAC user teammates. We were even thinking like expressive robotic objects, is that even a good idea? Could that be too playful? Could that be too othering? And we had a lots of emails back and forth to really discuss the idea because we were coming to this project as researchers who did work in HCI, human computer interaction and human robot interaction. But they were coming from their lived experience as augmented communicators. So it was important to discuss, even if this was worth like the goal or the direction. But through these discussions, this sidekick idea solidified. And I just wanted to be transparent that this is like a really important discussion to have rather than just bringing the ideas to the table without any opening up for feedback. So we discussed lots of things and possible concerns. Um, but with those in mind, we designed a participatory design workshop with three phases. And we really wanted to uphold this commitment of like access, of having meaningful participation in the design process. So we invited two augmented communicators, three of their close conversation partners that they chose. Some of them were friends, others were family members, and three puppeteers. Puppeteers understand nuances of movement and motion, and they know what to elicit from an audience just with like moving objects. And so we thought they would be great partners in this investigation of like expressive robots for communication. And what was interesting here is that a lot of emailing happened also before to introduce the puppeteers to augmented communicators and to these ideas. So when we came to the workshop, we were all kind of had some familiarity of key terms, topics to discuss. So let me tell you about the first phase of it. So in the telling activities, we really focused on scaffolding the sharing of stories of current lived experiences, reflecting on what really mattered to our augmented communicators and also to their close conversation partners. So we asked things and we sent this also beforehand so they could prepare um, all the ideas they had to bring them to share them at the workshop. We asked, what does communication feel like to you? And we used this really cool method from a lab called the Imaginaries Lab called New Metaphors. So we put a bunch of metaphors on the wall and labeled them with numbers so that they would be easy to reference. And we asked, how could this metaphor, perhaps a skeleton, showing kind of like the skeleton of a dinosaur in a museum, be a metaphor for communication? And with this question, we gave ample time for participants to reflect on, like, okay, perhaps how could a roller coaster or high points in the landscape or different metaphors be a metaphor for communication? And that was really interesting. We got to really interesting stories about their emotions towards communication, their experiences, past anecdotes, and that really helped us foster a really rich discussion around like 2 hours just talking about this, which was really great. And this helped us uncover some initial goals or conversation goals or kind of goals for this expressive sidekick or robot if we were to build it. Some participants expressed like it would be nice to have something like feeling moving around to filling that silence gap while I'm typing, or it would be like nice to tell others to remember what they were talking about, but let me finish. Or perhaps have something to help invite others to look at their AAC device or their screen at the appropriate time. And this was all through conversation. But then we wanted to have another instance of meaningful engagement. So we went into making. In the second phase of making, we really wanted to focus on embodying solutions in the form of physical prototypes to define possible forms and aesthetics of what this could look like, and really have another way to communicate those ideas from the abstract to the more tangible. And so in this making phase, we split the room into two teams, and each team was led by an AAC user, or augmented communicator designer, and they were directing this team of close conversation partners, so family members or friends they knew, and the puppeteers with ideas on how a robot could look like that could help them with a specific conversation goal. And so on the slide here, we have two prototypes showcase. One of them looks kind of like, I don't know, looks like a greenish, like it's basically two really big eyes with like bluish greenish eyes and a little like foam green nose. And it has also some eyebrows that are silver and like a pipe cleaner form. And this prototype came from a team led by Tammy, who was really interested in kind of using eyebrows and eyes as a way to express emotions like I'm upset or really again or not right now. And so in Tammy's team, they really focused on using eyes as a way to convey nonverbal information. But we also see another psychic that I would describe it as kind of like a flag or a sign. It has the words un momento por favor, which in Spanish means a moment, please. And it has a very important texture. It has like pink glitter on it because the maker of the sign was on Mark's team. And Mark loves glitter, color, and he wanted to be able to tell people, hey, wait a minute, un momento por favor, I'm typing, but he didn't want to be rude. And so using glitter was really important for him. And then in the sign, there's also kind of like a felt, very fluffy like material um, that is this called. It's like we see kind of an object like showing a one finger raised up, like hold a minute, please. But this is also very soft material. And Mark explained that this material was important because again, he's really sweet. He is really joyful and he doesn't want to be rude, but sometimes he just needs to tell people, please stop. I'm trying to communicate right now. Let me finish typing. And so in the making step, we see a lot of like decisions that um, really kind of showcase the important things that matter to our designers. And then we had a third step. The third step was all about enacting how could these robots move in space. In this third phase, puppeteers really helped us explore different psychic motions through behavior improvisations. And so they took those prototypes they built and moved them around space to create different behaviors that could support conversational goals. And then ACE users would assess if that could work or not. So puppeteers moved different psychic prototypes to indicate things like, I have to go. They would place the puppet near the watch because this is something that is important in conversation, telling the person, hey, I'm running out of time, I have to go. But that with a speech generating device can sound a little bit rude or cold. But if you have the robot slightly look at the watch, perhaps other people will understand. You have to go. In the video that is playing, we also see a psychic kind of lure somebody to an AAC user's communication device screen. So by role playing and kind of enacting different possible motions, we really got to explore what this could look like. In this other example, we also see, for example, how the motions could be at intervals. So perhaps like the flag that was created with the pink glitter could be raised up at a moment to say, like I'm almost ready, and then point to the AC user to say, okay, my turn. So throughout this design experience, we had lots of fun. We laughed at a lot of like different behavior improvisations, but we also really were pushed to think of like how this could work in the real world. But some tips that I would like to share and like what helped make this workshop accessible was having a lot of asynchronous and synchronous discussion, a lot of preparation beforehand, and afterwards, a lot of debriefing. That is especially helpful for people who type to speak because just typing and coming up with ideas on the go can be time consuming or even fatiguing. So it's important to think about both async and synchronous. And I think that still creativity was at a really high. We sometimes think that we need to be face to face all the time, but having that combination really helps. One big thing was also explaining functionality and goals clearly. I think that we often in academia, and I fall into this, we use a lot of jargon and we like take a lot of things for granted. And it's important to even like take that away and have this like beginner's mind and really explain everything and discuss how everything will play out to also enable people to have ideas in the planning phases. The other things as building a shared understanding, discussing ideas together, introducing ideas, technology, and key terms, and labeling concepts with a shorthand so they would be easy to type and easy to reference. We also set some access commitments at the beginning, like how we would allow for enough time for communication, how we would take turns, um, and how we expected everybody to behave. So in the end, we found out a lot of interesting things um, for possible socially assistive sidekicks for communication. But what I want to also share with you is that we took this a step further and really thinking about this last commitment of action. How could we really go from like theory to practice and really build something that is working and that really embodies these choices made by the user? So we used this design space. We generated conversational goals, the specific design values and parameters, potential forms, and a set of motions and behaviors to build a psychic with Mark. And Mark was really interested in a specific use case, moderating his student Senate meetings, where he was the president for, and just really regulating turn taking in groups. But we also took a step deeper into really learning about Mark's environment, what are the accessibility requirements of his daily context. And Mark created this glittery sign, the one moment please sign with a finger raised up. But we also allowed for time to explore outside of it. Mark had said that perhaps the like eye having eyes on a psychic might be a good idea. So for a little bit we explored that, but we ended up going back to a flag-like object because Mark noticed it was easier to display kind of a serious tone in his meetings. So through kind of a lot of videos of different prototypes, we pasted like paper and wood to different motors and sent him some videos and this is all asynchronous. He sent us back some drawings Mark did with his family about how things could really work for him. So in the end, this psychic needed to be small, easy to put on and off. It shouldn't be a safety hazard or an obstacle to move. And throughout this process that took us a little bit, like around 8 to 10 months, we were able to have a final design that looks like 3D printed object like that moves in a timer like or metronome motion. We 3D printed it red because we noticed it would stand out more from the background. And it has different motions that can be operated from one of his head switches. One main motion is typing, give me a minute, which is a continuous kind of like metronome motion from left to right. And it runs until he's done typing. A kind of like hey motion that's kind of waving in a shorter range of angles to just indicate hey to draw attention, and a really sharp reset motion to indicate I'm ready to share. So throughout this example, I just wanted to tell you that there's lots to do, lots of really cool workshops, lots of really cool design work, but perhaps let's consider when we're doing it, how we can really bring true access, true agency over decisions, and how we can really go the extra mile to really make it and shape it into a final design through actions. Um, and yeah, thank you so much.
We're going to take questions for a couple of minutes and we're going to welcome our colleagues from Ithaca. We're so glad you're here. I can only imagine what your day has been like. So thanks for joining us. Okay, questions. What a great talk. So, who has a question?
I have a question, please. So if you're in an environment like this and somebody is, do you say AC user? Is that the correct term? Or
Yeah,
so
I think like it could be like when the workshop we called everybody by their names, but for
okay,
the paper and things like
okay,
augmented communicator or
augmented,
AC
okay,
user, yeah.
okay, augmented communicator would like to say something and have everybody see what they're saying. How do you do that? Like, how does the person communicate so that everybody sees what they're saying?
Yes, so usually in different AAC devices have different settings. So some people have like text to speech. So after they're done typing, they can play it, the text to speech. That way, nobody really has to look at anyone's screen and you can hear it if you're able to hear. But other people prefer having no volume or no text to speech and just showing that screen. And so there, it is true that it is, for some folks, it can be easy to just grab the screen and show it to others. But for some others, it's really hard and there's some privacy kind of, people don't like it when you're looking at their screen.
I think I was thinking for more of like a public venue and like this, like if you're in something like this, um, how would you have somebody be able to, so would somebody probably use the speech option? Or is there something where you could project the words onto the screen? Because
That,
I'm
oh
used
yeah.
to the private speech with somebody, but I'm not used to something like this.
Yes, I think that there is so much work, and I'm super excited to be collaborating here with Toby Weinberg and Thais on this. But there's so much work that needs to be done in this space. What usually would happen is that people would do text to speech and perhaps put the microphone close to the text to speech. And if everything is accessible, we would also have captions, which would be great. So I think good accessibility practices help everyone, and so that's, I think, how it would work in that. And that's how we did it in the workshop, because we were a group of people, so we had captions going, but we also had the text to speech being played, so we could all hear everyone's contributions. But thank you for that.
Questions? Yeah.
So first I just want to start off by saying I love the way that you and your team co-created this prototype along with the individuals that would actually use the device. And I guess my question would be, what was the designing process like from going from these very low fidelity sort of scrappy prototypes to the final design that you have currently with the 3D printed version?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So it was definitely iterative design process. So we used a lot of like kind of first using a design space of like all the decisions we could make together. That really helped us. So first talking about what are conversational goals for this, and then moving into, okay, what are potential kind of important values or design parameters that matter to you. So some people really, we found that for everyone, nonverbal communication is about attention, precision, timing. But for you, it might be like, oh, I need this to be small, I need this to be portable. What are those design kind of constraints that matter? And then we did a lot of iteration of very low fidelity prototypes, using very off the shelf components like servo motors and paper and like popsicle sticks. that that worked because our final psychic form that Mark wanted looked like a flag or like a poster sign with like an attachment. So this is why that worked. But I would say like doing low fidelity prototyping and a lot of back and forth videos of like how this could look like was great. And then having a relationship with Mark and his family really helped because we got videos back about them being like, oh, yes, we would put this here or not. Or look, this is the space that the wheelchair needs to move in. This is why the size has to be smaller. So a lot of back and forth was really key.
I see you, Tice, but I want to ask one question before you take over because I know. Oh, and we have actually a question. Never mind. Okay, Toby, do you want me to read this aloud? Okay. Toby has two questions. One, how would these motions that have a predefined meaning for the user, but for a new communication partner that's not familiar with the motion, how is that common understanding achieved? And my second question is about the attention that it draws away from the user. How do you find the right balance to enhance the communication without taking the attention away from the user?
Those are really great questions. The first one on the like, okay, maybe because we designed this with the AC users goals in mind, right? But we also had close conversation partners in the loop. And this is really important for participatory design. It's not only about end users, but like all stakeholders affected. And so these motions were kind of also intuitively designed with their family members. And they were like, oh, yeah, I can understand that. Well, this is moving as a metronome that he's currently typing. But it is true that they had a further layer of understanding. That is, they knew what AC communication is about. So we tested actually this, and this was not part of the talk, but we have a really great paper on this with different communication partners. And so he took this psychic to meetings on Zoom and in person, and some people got it, but some others didn't. So he ended up having to add a message to explain the psychic before his meeting, saying, hey, I'm an augmented communicator. When the psychic moves, I'm typing. So there is a barrier of entry there because building common ground requires also more awareness about these diverse communication styles. So that's a challenge. And the second question was, no, I forgot. Oh yeah, attention. Yes, not being too distracting. Yes, we really wanted the psychic to be a psychic, like be a part of the conversation, but not the part. And that's also why when we were designing this with Mark to be more of a tangible product, Mark was like, I love these characters with eyes, but I think that would be too distracting. And it would give kind of this psychic, kind of an agent type of feel. So we went with like this more object looking like item because of that. So I think that's a really important thing to be concerned about. And we took it into account. So thank you.
I also just want to say that I think there's a piece here for people with a different set of disabilities because it codifies um, non-spoken communication. It gives those people who have trouble reading unspoken cues a very clear meter. So I think there is something for those for audience members or conversation participants, in addition to the augmented communicator, that builds some understanding for people with various